part I love that little part where there's the clap, there's the moment.
There you go. All right.
Ready.
Happy Monday the 16th. It is halfway through September. How we feeling?
We're feeling.
Okay. Okay.
Feeling good. Feeling good.
All right. Well, I want to Keller Williams post a industry update, and they did a YouTube short, and I really just kind of wanted to start with this, and then let's talk about it. Let me hit play real quick.
We did grow a bit from June to July, but year over year, still down a bit. We're at 3.95
Don't forget to share the sound.
Annual pace for home sales. Prices were up about 4.2%. We've come down off of the 6% appreciation we were seeing earlier this year, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
Inventory was relatively flat from June to July. We're at 4 months right now. About 1.3 million homes were for sale at the end of the month. That's an improvement. We're about 20% from last year. We'd like to see that continue to come up.
I hear that it's better than last month.
Are you sharing it? Or?
I'll take any win right now if I'm in the real estate industry.
All right. So, Manny, here's what Keller Williams put out. Okay.
Hey, Brett,
so,
I don't know if you're aware. We didn't see. Oh, it was. Okay. I guess it was for others. There we go.
It was you, Manny.
Oh, that's weird. Okay.
Mr. Hale, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you guys doing?
I'm good. So here's what KW's putting out nationally. They're saying home sales at the end of July, they were predicting us to be just under 4 million annual home sales, which is slightly down from 2023. I'm still optimistic. I think fourth quarter is going to give us an opportunity to actually outperform 2023. But right now, if everything held true, 2024 is projected to be a little bit down from last year. The other thing he's projecting is home prices. This is the conundrum of the market. With home sales down, with inventory up, prices are still appreciating. And on a national level, we're still appreciating considerably. It's about 4% is what he quoted in price appreciation nationally, which his comment was historically it's 4 to 6%, and we're at 4% price appreciation right now, which is healthy. And then the other thing he was talking about was inventory, and inventory is still continuing to climb. Yet I think it's peaking. And let's hit the Atlanta market real quick. So here's inventory in Atlanta. And the yellow months are 2023. The teal months are 2024. At the end of August, we were 3.9 months of inventory. So when we start going through these numbers, you're going to see active listings coming on the market. And inventory obviously is a relationship between buyer demand and supply of new listings coming on the market. Zena, when Zoom did an update, there's tabs at the top. You've got to click Brett's screen at the top of your screen to see what I'm showing.
Yes, I can see it.
Got it?
So much.
Okay. I'm glad you asked because not everybody knows about those tabs up there. So, the inventory, I think, is not going to keep going up. I think it's going to stall out or actually probably tailor off at around 4 months of inventory. That would be my prediction. But in contrast, you can see, where is it? Right here, home prices. So our home prices, if I can zoom in here, actually, let's just do this. All right. So here's March, April, May, June, July, August home prices in median home price. So we peak always in the summer months. It peaked out if we were doing FMLS, it's 407. Greater Atlanta is 450 in June. And what have home prices done since? They've come down a little bit. But look at the gap between 2023 and 2024. We're up year over year 2.05% or $8,000. And in FMLS, and we're up 3.57% or $15,000 in Greater Atlanta. So you saw internationally, they were up 4%. In Atlanta, we're up 3.57% in Greater Atlanta. I'll take it. And I think what's the enigma of the real estate market is when home sales go down and inventory goes up, it's not predictable for home prices to go up, but they are going up. And I think that's just a healthy factor for owning real estate in Atlanta. What do y'all think?
Just tells me demand is holding its ground, regardless of pure volume, analysis.
And I'm glad you went from the YouTube, that has the national view, kind of idea behind it, and then the local Atlanta, because we are a little bit of a unicorn still. And remember, we're still bringing in these jobs.
We're still bringing in what?
I said, we're still bringing in jobs and people that are keeping our market a little bit, at a different pace than the rest of the nation.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hit the numbers. Fulton County's got 1,085 new listings that hit the market in the last 7 days. That's a high back all the way back to July. And we had a big week in July, but before that, 1,085, I'd have to go back a really long way to see that amount of new listings coming on the market. So if I just stop there, what does that mean? It is September. The market's supposed to be slowing down. The market, the economy is stalled out a little bit. Why is 1,085 people raising their hands saying, I want to put my house on the market right now? What do you think?
I think a big part is what we've been talking about on here. At some point, those expired, right? Expires hadn't happened in a bit. People started working them. And I think we're seeing some relistings of that. That would be one guess.
Okay. I've got a different guess. Rick, you got a thought?
I would speculate that there's the have tos versus want tos. Usually September, October, they're not just doing it for convenience or to see what the market will do. They're motivated and need to sell for some various reasons, obviously transfers, some sort of mobility or interest rates. The interest rate excitement around it dipping a little may inspire people. Now the gap isn't quite as dramatic as it was even a couple of months ago.
That's what I think it is. I think over the last 12 to 18 months, how many times have we come on this call and talked about people that are saying, I don't want to sell my house that has a 3% interest rate and move and pay 7%. And now that I think rates have moved, I think people are starting to dissipate that thought process of saying, I've been sitting in my house maybe 2 years longer than I wanted to, waiting on something to change, and now it's changing. So now's the time to go ahead and sell my house and move.
I think you're probably spot on.
I mean, I don't know. It's speculation, but there's certainly something in this number with that amount of new listings coming on the market. Anyway, 110 said yes to the house in the last 7 days. It's a little bit off what we were doing in the summer, but not drastic. We expect it to slow down a little bit third quarter. We've got 274 pending. If you look back in July, there was 263 pending, 270. We got close to 300, 280, 274 pending after the school started mid-September. That to me is a really exciting number.
We also had 236 expire the end of it looks like a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many of those were took a week or two to relist. Maybe there's an element of that in here too. Because 236, I don't know if you go back to see 207 was the end of last month. So an extra 30's almost, 50's the gap.
Yep. And 285 closed out in the last 7 days, which is really healthy
That's
number
awesome.
for Fulton
Yeah.
County. So I feel optimistic about home sales going on right now, and I feel really optimistic about what's coming in the next 90 days. You might think the election's going to disrupt. I think the interest rate's going to negate any election effect on home sales. And I actually believe, I've said it multiple times, that if I was going to buy real estate, I think the best time to buy real estate would be October, November this year, because you're going to get a great interest rate. You're going to probably get a great price on property of people that are just sat on the market maybe a little bit too long. Their house hadn't sold, and prices are going nowhere but up after this election. So just school for thought. All right. 542 in DeKalb in the last 7 days. Not as drastic of a spike as Fulton County was, but it's still really healthy new listings coming on the market. A little bit off of what they were doing in the summertime, but not drastically off. 75 said yes. DeKalb County is our steady Eddie. Look at these numbers. 61, 83, 91, 70, 80, 73, 75, 76, 96, 65, 75. It's just like constant straight line of people buying real estate in DeKalb County. And I love that. 151 pending, same thing. These numbers are pretty consistent. And then closed out in the last 7 days, 180. That is a big number for DeKalb County. You look back, there's only one, August 5th was 191. I can keep going back, and then you got to go back into June when they were in the 200s to see that amount of properties closing out in the last 7 days. Really strong numbers. And just to round us out with Cobb, 526 new active inventory, 80 under contract, said yes. They had a little spike over Labor Day holiday, which is unusual, but overall, very straight line numbers of people going under contract. 169 pending, a little bit off, but not much off what they were doing in the summertime. And then 160 closed out in the last 7 days. They had a low last week, and then they bounce around a little bit more for whatever reason, but 160 and 128, if you put those two together, is probably a little bit lower in Cobb County. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, the ratio of active to closed is still in the ballpark of what it was when it was escalate, and there were a few extra listings. Their absorption rate is it's pretty impressive for as a county goes. Only 62 expired at the end of, end of August. That tells me that there's demand there that's consuming a big chunk of what they do have.
Yep, for sure. All right, let's go into a weird conversation for a minute. So there's this thing called the Federal Reserve Rate. So somebody smart, give me a quick explanation of what the Fed rate is.
Was that a trick question for anybody?
No, go for it, Rick. What's the Fed rate?
I mean, it's the rate that banks exchange money that ultimately trickles down into what consumers pay typically.
So, and it's the lever the U.S. government uses to try to control fiscal policy, right?
Inflation control primarily, yeah.
When inflation got high, this is the lever that the Federal Reserve was highly motivated to continue to raise to pull inflation down. And if you read online, we actually have one article that talks about aggressive rate cuts as recession fears rise. I don't believe we're necessarily going into a recession, and there's a lot of economic conversation around that. However, there is a movement or a momentum of the Fed to drop interest rates, and not mortgage rates, but the Fed rate. So currently, the current target rate is between 525 and 550. So to go from 525 to 550 would be to drop that to 475 to 500 would be a half point drop. So currently, for the September 18th meeting, which is in 2 days, there's a 55% probability that the Fed's going to do a half point reduction in 2 days. There is a 45% probability that they're going to do a quarter point reduction, but there's a 100% probability that they're dropping the rate in 2 days. Why is that such a big talking point right now?
Well, they're trying to motivate and spawn more activity in the business sector. And what's happened, in my opinion, is by raising the rates consistently over such a long period of time, there's the lagging effect of when it actually hits consumers, and a lagging effect when companies and businesses look at their balance sheets and their P&Ls and make decisions to cut people or change their expenses or alter their, marketing strategies. And so I think the lagging effect of the realization that it did affect productivity, which ultimately slows the market and helps counterbalance the inflationary issues we were facing over the last really year and a half. And so now they're like, okay, well, I think we've hit the right button. But again, now the Fed's lagging in their decision-making chain, and it's now we need to pick things up a bit.
Yeah, I think also talk to your partners in your offices. We've had conversations with a lot of our lender partners in our office. There's some really good discussion here that you should be sharing with your sphere, with your home buying sphere, because like Rick just said, it takes a while for this stuff to trickle. But if you can actually be, again, the professional that can explain what's kind of happening and what's to come, you're going to be a rock star, because there's a lot of pressure on the feds to drop rates, because what we need is kind of that soft landing. We've been saying this. It can't, wreak havoc and create chaos. It has to be done well. So I think that's where a lot of the pressure, seems to lie. But have
and if you just keep clicking, so that by November 7th, which is the second meeting, this is showing a whole 31% probability that there would be an entire point drop down to 425 to 450. Then 3/4 point, there's a 50% probability within the next 2 meetings they would have dropped a 3/4 point. So all this is a probability factor, right? The question is, how does it affect us? So when the Fed drops the prime rate, it affects consumers directly, quickly, in two ways. One, most people's credit card debt is priced off of the Federal Reserve rate. So if you actually read the back of the credit card statement that says your rate is 10.74 plus prime, well, what that means is whatever this rate is, if it goes down, the interest on your credit card actually goes down. So for somebody carrying debt load on a consumer credit card, their cost or their interest should adjust with this, just like it adjusted when it went up. Another thing that's specifically priced off of the Federal Reserve rate are HELOC loans. So most of your small banks do their HELOC loans on prime. And when prime goes up, it goes up. And when it goes down, it goes down. So if people are using HELOC loans for investment purposes or whatever, this could put more money back in their pocket on a month-to-month basis. And it indirectly affects mortgage rates. So I wanted to move to this. So this is the 10-year Treasury. Why do we look at this in terms of mortgage rates? Rick, Manny?
Well, that's how they raise money. So it's based on the cost of money. I mean, there's a correlation, there's an overlay.
And most of your mortgage rates are priced directly to the 10-year Treasury note, right? So when the Treasury note goes down, mortgage rates go down. When the Treasury note goes up, mortgage rates go up. And it's the most directly related economic stat to mortgage rates. So when the US Treasury note peaked at 4.7% in April, what were mortgage rates in May and June?
Higher, obviously.
Yeah, like 7.5. We got really close to 7.5. And then this US Treasury slowly started coming down. There was 1 week, early August, it got down to 3.7. Do you remember what happened to mortgage rates right at the beginning of September?
Yeah.
And then it bounced around, but now it's at 3.6. So prediction wise says that our mortgage rates are coming down. That's not new information, but this is how you can explain it.
Yeah.
Right.
And the bottom line is, where can a bank deploy capital and get the greatest return on investment? You know, houses are considered one of the safest investments, you know, in terms of a portfolio. And most, especially all brokers, resell their loans. They don't actually, they're brokering that to someone else who's in the back room analyzing, okay, we can either loan that to said homeowner, or we can drop it into, you know, some version of a treasury note or bonds, or, and so that's why there's a correlation too.
Yep. So if we just, all this conversation leaning to today's mortgage rates. So the 30-year fix is showing up at 6.14. If I was buying a house today, and I had cash, I might consider putting less money down and actually buy that rate down into the fives. And I know a lot of people are doing that. Or I could consider doing a 15-year fix at 5.6. And at a $250,000 loan amount, it's a difference about $500 a month or a car payment. So it could be strategic to look at some of these other loan products. The FHA and VA are at 5.7. Those are great interest rates, guys. So yes, we're getting help with the interest rate. And yes, the prediction is that those rates are going to continue to come down a little bit going into 2025. Yet the question is, should the consumer wait?
Yeah,
I mean, this is an age-old
the right
question
time to
for us.
buy? Is this the right time to buy?
What do you think?
I think
My
this is
answer is always twofold. One, what's your budget and life experience, and you know, that quality of life in this particular investment or property, and can you afford it? And the second half of it is, how long do you plan to stay in it? Because long term, a point left or right is largely irrelevant when you factor in 3 to 4% typical appreciation.
Yeah.
And mortgage interest is tax deductible. So what looks like a full point, when you back out your interest and you're able to write that off of your taxable income, it's far less impactful than most people, you know, just automatically assume. And so make it real money, and then again, reverse engineer it into their budget, and then overlay quality of life. Now you've got a quality conversation in your consulting appointment.
I think what's really cool too is we've been focusing on the have tos because of the interest rate. We're starting to get into, if you can explain it correctly, like I said, if you can get in there and explain to them why this could work in their situation, like Rick said, we're opening it up to the, okay, I've been on the fence about it. Let's make it happen.
It's that door is opening. It's
Yes.
been closed. It's starting to open.
Yep.
All right. So this is interesting. Baby boomers own a fourth of all large homes in the US, and they aren't selling. So I've got a thought process around this, but what it says in this article is the baby boomers they surveyed, 54% said they plan to continuing aging in place, meaning that term of downsizing is not as common today as it maybe was 5-10 years ago. Just 15% said they plan to sell their home in the next 5 years. And then the other part of this is Redfin previously reported baby boomers own about 28% of all 3-bedroom homes in the US. Is that a shocking number to you? almost a third of the 3-bedroom homes are owned by the baby boomer generation. And if they're not necessarily considering downsizing or selling, statistically, that could be a negative information for us, or that could be not really a positive for us to move into home sales. And then 40% said they would sell because they wouldn't sell because their mortgage is paid off, and 37% said they plan to leave their homes behind as an inheritance. So if you take this chunk of the population, out of the pool of people that we can sell real estate to, I'm not saying 100%, but there's certainly a movement where baby boomers are staying in their homes. Here's my weird thought. I don't know, it's weird, but interesting. So we've always trained and coached to go build a database, systematically communicate with your database for repeat and referral businesses. And I still believe that is a foundational truth to great success in real estate, as it always will be. Yet, Rick, if I said you had 250 people in your database, could it be strategic to analyze who are those 250 people? Because my guess is there's a lot of agents that have been selling real estate 20, 25 years, and their database has grown up with them. And they may have a whole lot of baby boomers in that database. And then they're frustrated or scratching their head going, man, I'm not getting the same amount of referrals out of them. I'm not selling the same number of houses. And it could be strategic to actually go look at who is in your database and maybe make some action plans to call your baby boomer clients and get their kids into your database, or start to market or target different generations to be in your sphere of influence. What do you think about that?
I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. And I think this is the perfect time. If you've run out of things to talk about and feel like you've exhausted, the whole, are you ready to buy, sell, or invest? Maybe the angle is more, hey, I'm taking a survey, looking at a crystal ball and speculating, how far out do you think it would be before you would consider selling? And not because there's any pressure to work with me, or this is simply for, polling purposes, and just see what they say. If they go 20 years, it could be 5 or 10, but it won't be this year. You know what I mean? And do the math on your database and the quality of potential. One is if they do business, the other, remember, it's 12 to 2 is the ratio of conversion. One of them should be a direct sale. The other one should be a referral. And so maybe go back and analyze how many referrals you've been getting and make sure that you're getting a 6-to-1 referral return based on the messaging and the marketing you deployed.
There's two lemonade out of lemons out of this article that I found. One is absolutely get the kids in your database, get yourself invited to them having their first kid, their first home, get yourself involved. The other one was, there was a really interesting part of this. They mentioned 37% are thinking of leaving their homes for inheritance. This part stood out to me because this is, again, where you need to be making those touches and figuring out, because so many of these homes will be sold by their kids, right? So once again, things in your database, things in your newsletter, articles that you're sharing, information you're sharing, that's relevant to them.
There you go.
Realize if they're leaving it, they're probably between 65 and 85 years old. So they're leaving it to someone who's 45 to 60. They probably own a home and they may love their home. So it gets sold. It just may transfer inside of an estate strategy.
Exactly.
And so are you in relationship with the next owner to the extent that, hey, they call you first, just like that relationship you had with the actual purchaser you helped?
There you go. I got 2 more things real quick before we sign out. One is, tomorrow will have been 1 month since the NAR change. How do we feel about it? How's it going? We're a month in.
I think we're feeling it. We're feeling it to an extent. People are, getting our news out of the articles. That's why we study it here. They're feeling it.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it feels like we made a change and we moved to a more professional way of conducting business. Yet it doesn't feel like business just fell off a fiscal cliff. It feels like there's been some struggle of getting everybody educated and into best practices. Yet, for the most part, people that are engaged with our broker conversations, with our team leaders talking about strategy, it does feel like business as usual. However, what I want, and Manny was funny. This next article I'm going to put up, he said, I don't like this article. uh, Here's what has happened. There are a lot of opinions, and because of the social media environment and the news media environment, there are platforms for people to throw opinions all over the place. And there's a lot of emotions around those opinions. And one of the things Gary Keller taught me, out of the many things Gary Keller taught me, is he said, I read books the first 40 years of my life to create my framework for my values and my thinking. And then after 40 years, in the second half of my life, I read books to either validate my thinking or to challenge my thinking. But my thinking was pretty much in line by the time I hit about 40 years old. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. So we had this article that was an opinion piece on Inman, and I didn't like it either. But I thought about that comment Gary said of saying, how confident are you in your values and your opinion around what the truth is to you? Therefore, when you read an article, does it challenge your thinking and then makes you double down on your current thinking, or does it challenge your thinking to cause you to maybe think differently? This article was written by a commercial agent, and really just, I mean, what was triggering about this article, Manny?
For me, it was, and this is a good example of why we love KW and why it works, right? Because I think there were some broad statements made here about opportunities for agents and, we're not going out and going in with good info for our clients. And I just sat here and I said, these are hard opinions to read for our mental as responsible realtors, because so many of us have been doing these things, these practices. I know some rock star agents from our offices that volunteer for nonprofits and boards and are constantly promoting property rights, enhancing the industry, but it's the bad seeds that did get the attention here, right? And that's why we have these changes. So we just have to continue doing the good work, keep up the good work. We are in this show our value era, as some would say, and we have to keep it up. That's it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rick.
One of the key points was you should, he suggested revealing all of your offers to buyers. And, what triggered that? I mean, I think the most important way to approach consulting is to make sure you're in question mode and reveal mode. So you reveal facts, figures, and your experience, and ultimately it's their decision. Your client should be in the driver's seat, but your job is to arm them with all of the critical key data to make intelligent decisions. I don't think there's a steadfast, he made it sounded very black and white. You do this and that's how you, the answer is sometimes, and it depends. And that's what actually gives us ultimate value. If it was a do this 5 things every time and win, they don't need you. There's no subjectivity to the experience or their situation or a buyer's experience either. And you're trying to navigate both sides. The transparent part that I did like was being open and honest where appropriate so that people feel safe and eliminate some of the fear of being tricked or bamboozled.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, I like to start and end on time, but I thought it was worthy of a 4-minute over stoppage time. Thank you, guys. Just realize we got your back. We want to make sure we're front edge in training and best practices. And if you're leaned in, we got you.
Yeah. Good job, Manny. Good job, Brett. Thank you,
Have a
guys.
good one.
Have a good one, everyone.
What's up, Mark Jones?